Today's topic will be meal timing. So meal timing in regards to health, regards to hormonal balance, muscle growth, things like that. Very hot topic when you talk to anyone, because there are so many, first of all, approaches to nutrition. Then there are fasting. Then there are, if it fits your macros. Everything is confusing, and you kind of don't even know where to look at. I get a lot of messages about, hey, I'm fasting and I'm doing this, and I watch this podcast or this and that. But at the same time, everyone is missing the point that it's not about the approach, it's about what fits you. But there is still some kind of general consensus that we all could agree to, as long as we know what outcome is. So if you say, I want to lose weight, meal timing probably is not so relevant if you just want to lose any kind of weight. If you want to lose body fat and maintain muscle mass, that's going to be different. If you want to gain muscle mass at optimal rate, that might be even different as well. So let's dig into the concept of meal timing and the significance in health and fitness. Is it important?
Yes, it is important. And the thing that you said in there, the concept of meal timing, right? Like, I'm going to give you the details of what does that actually mean? Because like you said, with the intermittent fasting, with this and that and whatever, the concept is not being elucidated. It's kind of there, but people aren't really digging into it and laying it out. So I think that's probably where we should start, right? What is the concept of meal timing? It is optimizing the response of the food being introduced to your body. So your body being the environment, and your body also within the environment that you're at, right? So if you give it the right food content at specific times of the day, your body can use that more appropriately for the goal at hand. That is literally what meal timing is, right? It's not, I fast. It's not, I eat 30 minutes before I work out, or 30 minutes after. Those are when you ate, but that's not the concept of meal timing. The concept is what I just said before. You're trying to put in certain types of food at certain times of day to optimize what you're doing in the physical world, right? So the overarching concept is this. It's not just who you are, it's also where you live, right? And this is not a foreign subject if you've been following any of our episodes, right?
Yeah.
Where you live makes a huge difference. And I'll get into the details of that. But basically,
I would even go as far as pushing where you live and how you live. Will make
very yes, that all of that, correct. Yes, I'm glad you said that. Now, here is a very first step of food overall for general health, irrelevant of what you're doing with body composition. Okay, that needs to be the base, and we've elucidated this before. Eating only when the sun is out is rule number one, right? If the sun is not out, you shouldn't be eating, period. That solves a big chunk of accomplishing what the goal is of food time, which is you're putting in the food to be assimilated more correctly than at other points in time during the day. That's rule number one. When the sun is out is the most optimal time to eat food. Rule number two would be the first meal of the day is definitely the most important, right? That meal sets up different cascades throughout the day that are going to be helpful or hinder what you want to accomplish, okay?
And that usually goes against everyone who is for fasting, because people people think that fasting means not eating in the morning, where you can fast at night as well. It doesn't necessarily mean don't eat until midday or early afternoon. So
yeah, and in fact, it puts a kind of a red mark on fasting later into the day, because the meals that you, or the food that you consume into the evening, those are doing different things that you probably don't want because of rule number one that I just said. The food will be processed better during daylight hours, period, right? That's without a doubt. That is happening. There's research on that, a lot more research coming, and they call that, right? And I'm hesitant to name the name of it, of what it's called, but what it is, it's time restricted eating, right? But the concept, when you look up time restricted eating, is that you are eating only during the day. An 8-hour window or 10-hour window is the average, because guess what? Most days are 8 to 10 hours long. And this is where it varies, right? Their research says this is the average. But what if you live in Canada and it's summertime, right? Well, now your day is 16 hours, right? So now your eating window has expanded. And in the same place in December, your eating window has shrank. It
Yes, probably around
changes.
Christmas, you're not going to get any sunlight.
Yeah, well, it'll still be daylight, so the food will still be. If you're doing our daily habits of, hey, if you live high latitude, you need to get a little bit cold in the morning, etc. If you're doing those things, your body will know, hey, there's daylight here, but the day is like 6 hours long, right? So you have a 6-hour eating window in the winter. The food will be processed better, and you will retain muscle mass better if you're eating it in those concepts, or you'll lose body fat better if you're in those concepts. So that's why I say that's rule number one of like meal timing. The timing of your food should be during daylight hours as much as possible. And you try to cut off too much at the night and cut off too much in the morning, right? So if you wake up before it gets daylight, you should probably just wait to eat until it's daylight. If you are somebody who has to stay up late for whatever reason, you should probably finish your last meal before it gets dark. You're going to have better outcomes. Okay. That's rule number one. Rule number two is the first meal is the most important when it comes to the goal that you're trying to accomplish, right? If you're trying to lose weight, for example, that's probably a meal where you don't want a whole lot of carbohydrates to spike insulin, because that's also the start of your day when you're going to be the most active, right? So you can keep your insulin response lower or more appropriate so that you're actively able to release body fat if you need it, because the key concept of losing weight is still your calories are going to be lower than needed. But if you're constantly bringing in carbs and carbs, like people are taught this, I don't know why they're doing that, especially when it comes from like a shake or something like that, your insulin is spiking so damn high and it's taking so long to get regulated. You're not losing, you're spending more time spinning your wheels, right?
And this is something what we did in one of the videos that we talked about, that I did blood glucose monitoring, and only things that did mess my blood glucose up was protein shake.
Yeah, literally no carbs. It was just a protein shake. Imagine a meal replacement because you're on the run, right? I'm too busy to have a meal or whatever, so I'm just gonna have this bar and a shake. No, do not do that. You're setting that the next 2 hours or 3 hours are spinning for no reason as far as like fat loss goes, right? So there's concepts like that. And the reason why I elucidated those details is that, okay, you understand, okay, I got to control some insulin, stuff like that. So how do you do that? What does that look like broad across the day? Your first meals before 10 or 11 a.m. should be lower in carbohydrates. And that's where you should be getting lots of healthy fats, lots of protein from whole food sources. And you should also be getting most of your micronutrients. So that's where you're going to get your veggies or fruits, depending on where you live, right? Fruits if you live low latitude, or fruits if you live in the summer at a high latitude. You don't eat fruits in the winter, right? So there's also a seasonal concept that you have to adhere to. But that's where you're going to get your micronutrients, both from essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, and essential vitamins and minerals. That's where you should fuel most of that coming from your diet, the first part of your day. And then in the middle part of the day, that's where you fuel performance, right? If you're going to be training, or you just trained at like mid-morning, or you are training mid-afternoon or in the middle of the day, that's where you're going to fuel your training. Now, there's some concepts around training or performance, right? And that is this: if you're hypertrophy, let's talk about hypertrophy, right? If you're going to train for hypertrophy, ideally you're working with somebody like us or somebody that knows what they're talking about, where they're actively depleting glycogen in the muscles, and we're running that system as hard as possible so that we can create hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is just muscle size. It doesn't mean muscle tissue. It just means we want to make your muscles hold more fuel, look more full, and start the anabolic process of, if you have more local fuel, then you're more likely to always be rebuilding actual muscle tissue. That's step number one in training for muscle hypertrophy. If you know what you're doing, is you want to be actively spinning that glycolytic cycle. Glycolytic cycle means that you're emptying the tank of glycogen in your blood and in your liver, and hopefully using it up in the correct muscles that you want to train. The next step to that is you want to refuel that whole system and fill up the tank in the muscle again and fill up the tank in your liver again. So that's where carbohydrates in the middle of the day are excellent, especially if you do get some intermittent daylight during the day. Why? Because your body will understand, hey, it's midday. This is the time where this person is probably going to be the most active. If we get carbohydrates in, we're already prepped enzymatically, we're already prepped hormonally to optimize the intake of large amounts of carbohydrates, right? Especially if it's in the summertime, if you're living in Canada or high latitude, or if you're living closer to the equator, midday is always really strong sun. And so your body starts to tune its circadian rhythm, right? That's another thing. Your circadian rhythm is not when you wake up and when you sleep. Your circadian rhythm is dictated by those things, but it's the way that your body processes and changes biological processes throughout the day and into the sleep cycle, throughout the day and into, that's your circadian rhythm. So if you do this correctly, in the middle of the day, you process a lot of carbohydrates, right? That's what's going to be the bulk of your rice, your potatoes, all of that type of stuff. You're not so much worried about micronutrients. You did that earlier in the day. Not so much worried about amino acids that are essential or fatty acids that are essential. You did that earlier in the day. And you just, maybe you eat 1 or 2 meals, one before training, one after training, sometime broadly between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., right? Let's just say you have that big window of middle of the day concept where that's where the majority of your carbohydrates, not all of them. Like, I'm not saying you only eat carbs in the middle of the day. I'm saying that's where the majority, 75% of your carbohydrates, are going to be coming in that middle part of the day. And then in the evening, you flip it back to what happened in the morning. Hey, you did some damage, right? Whether that was mental, whether that's physical, etc. You fueled it properly so you could execute a lot of damage, right? With the middle of the day stuff. And then in the evening, guess what you do? You do the same thing you did in the morning, because you're going to be going to sleep and you can't put shit in your mouth. Sorry for the language. You can't put stuff in your mouth, right? So you're going to sleep. So now the concept is I need to recover from what I've done throughout the day. So then what do? Essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, micronutrients, etc. So you basically repeat what you did in the morning. You have whole food sources of veggies or fruits or micronutrient dense foods along with minimal carbohydrates. So that's where berries are an excellent fruit if you live somewhere where it's growing at that time, because they're very low on calories, very low on carbohydrates, high in micronutrients. Or, if you don't live in a season where that's growing or a place where that's growing, then vegetables are the thing you stick to as far as micronutrients go. And then as far as, foods, whole foods, right? You're getting your essential fatty acids from omega-3 sources. Those are the essential fatty acids. People forget that. That means you have to eat them. Okay. So you get that in, and steak, whole food meat sources, and you're getting your saturated fats from them, because saturated fats turn into some level of cholesterol level. And the first step in sex hormones is sulfating cholesterol by the sun to downstream turn into DHEA, pregnenolone, and then from pregnenolone to progesterone, from DHEA to testosterone, estrogen. All your sex hormones start with eating meat or eggs or things that have actual sunlight coating for making sex hormones. Okay. And that's the gist of the concept of meal timing. Now, most people are like, well, how do I integrate this into the stuff I already know?
Yeah, because there will be very small amount of people who actually live like this. The more often than not, I see a small snack in breakfast or shake before training, because we need to train first thing in the morning now, so to speak. And then the biggest meal is usually at night, because that's where they go to sit down.
Yeah,
and then
go ahead.
Then they come with blood tests to me, and I'm like, it's nothing in your diet. Your diet is kind of correct, but in not correct sequence.
Especially the one at night, because let's hypothetically elucidate. Let's focus in on that part. Okay. So you had most of your calories, and not even that many, 55% of your calories, you have it in the last 2 meals before you go to bed, right? Even if you do not eat into the night, let's hypothetically say, hey, I got busy, I'm eating 50% of my carbohydrates in the second to last meal, and the next 25 to 30% of my carbohydrates in the evening meal. And what does your body need to do? It needs to use insulin to drive those glucose molecules into the places that you need to go into, and all of that. Well, guess what else people are doing at night? They're watching TV, they're on their computer. That also, remember our diabetic video. That's a compound effect. That's not a 1 + 1 = 2. That's a 1 + 1 = 3. Your insulin is being raised by your food, and then boom, the sun goes down, and now you have a whole bunch of blue light interacting with your skin and your face and your eye, and boom, it spikes even higher. So now it stays high 4 or 5 hours into the evening, even when you're sleeping. You're supposed to be able to release fatty acids and glycogen from your liver and from your fat stores to fuel repair at night. Not if your insulin is high. That's not going to happen. So you've automatically put a brake on the recompositioning process that should be happening at night. It doesn't even get started until halfway through sleep. And that's if you stopped eating when it got dark. Most people don't even do that. Most people are like, no, I have my second to last meal right at evening time, and then I'll have my last meal about an hour before bed, which has already been dark for 2 hours. So then your insulin stays high almost until you're about to wake up, right? So then you wake up and you're like, why am I fucking bloated? Why? I don't look good. I should be looking better, right? And like, well, how is your evening going, right? What's going on there? So that's why I wanted to focus in on that, where you're doing yourself a disservice when you think you're doing good, right? I'm eating my right macros, right? I'm at the end of the day, I've ate the right macros. I'm like, yeah, but where did you eat them? That matters. It matters more than you think. The environment you introduce any stimulus into matters a lot, because it changes the outcome, right? It can be drugs, it can be supplements, it can be food, it can be the training itself. The stimulus that you introduce into the environment actually changes the outcome of the stimulus, if it's the wrong environment or the correct environment. That's a concept people don't understand.
And I think this is a great point where you just described that maybe looking up to your favorite professional bodybuilder for nutritional advice is not the smartest idea, because there will be so many drugs involved. You'll get away with anything.
Yeah, you can mask bad decisions with enough drugs. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can do that. And even then, those drugs, if they're being taken incorrectly, is also what's going to shorten their lifespan, right? Like that is a key concept of, okay, I took all these drugs and my blood pressure went high. Well, that doesn't happen to everybody. I know that. I know people that take a ton of drugs, blood pressure unaffected. That means their heart is not being jeopardized. The reason why is because they're activating certain things that we talked about. Remember our series going back about sunscreen and heart health, and how the sun, if you're blocking it, if you wear a lot of sunscreen, you're actually more at risk for all cancers and more cardiovascular events. Why are you more at risk for cardiovascular events? Sorry about the noise. You're more at risk because the sun actually raises a molecule called adenosine, which is a blood pressure, adenosine and nitric oxide, two of them. One is a coordination thing, so like how your heart pumps, and the other one is a vasodilator and a blood pressure regulator, right? That's why I'm saying this whole concept that we just talked about meal timing dovetails with the concept of how you should live your 24-hour clock, so that you can now take drugs or supplements to accelerate growth at certain points in time and not suffer nearly as much detriment as somebody who's just taking a bunch of them at any cost and living a crappy lifestyle. And instead of living to be 70 like Arnold or something like that and still being jacked, they're only going to live to 40, right? Like, I don't know who only wants to live to 40. I certainly don't.
Yeah, we see this a lot with like younger kids, so to speak. They just do all the drug protocols on the planet and then don't do any lifestyle protocols that bodybuilders of 90s did. Like Arnold was outside all the time. He was a bloody bricklayer. He's doing 8 hours of training and then 8 hours of bricklaying and then 8 hours of sleeping around probably, but no.
Yeah, and guess what? he didn't care about a roof over his head, and he slept on the beach probably a lot more than normal, and he was basically outside all the time. Why do you think that he used the drugs that he used, looked the way that he looked, and now he's almost, what is he, like 75 or something like that?
76 or 7, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, for a 76-year-old, he looks pretty fucking good, especially because he doesn't have heart health problems. Like maybe he's on a little bit of I mean, but he's 70 something, right? Like that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like he's still walking around, and he doesn't have an enlarged heart or any of these, because we are seeing people die. Literally, we're seeing people die from using drug protocols and living an incorrect lifestyle that's exaggerating the effects that we don't want from these drugs. And people think that, oh, I should go take telmisartan to regulate my blood pressure. I should go take more drugs to regulate and counteract and have a safety net of these things. I'm like, no. You need to start with your life. You need to start with how you eat. You need to start with how you rise and set with the sun, so that your body understands correctly how to process foods, blood pressure, etc., correctly. And then when you add drugs on top of that, if that's an added effect instead of a takeaway effect from your lifespan.
I believe this part is lost, where people just go into, we need to take this, and whatever this person says, when you need to look up who were coming before, and the ones that actually survived and have the highest quality of life, look into their history and what they did and how they did. Like Dorian Yates, he's doing yogas and he's outside,
not just the drugs,
and all
not just the drugs.
Yeah. So lifestyle is extremely important, and that's why you probably see Eastern Europeans who get away with everything, because they still live like cavemen, to be honest. they just don't have so much distractions that keeps them inside the house. They are always active outside. Most of the jobs will be labor stuff and these kind of things. They go hand in hand. And when we see a lot of people coming with issues through their blood test, it's usually lifestyle related. It's not even related to anything else they do. And when you fix that lifestyle, it kind of evens out itself. So this brings me to a question about meal timing and impact on hormonal balance, which you already alluded to. Hey, insulin spikes and all those kind of things, ghrelin, leptin, whatever. Is there something that we can help in terms of thyroid health with food timing as well, or things like that are really affecting your metabolism as such?
Yeah. So if you stick to that, like, okay, so I gave you gold there at the beginning, as far as like, hey, try to get micronutrients, essential fatty acids here at the bookends of the day. Okay. When you do that, and you also stimulate yourself with some cold, or stimulate yourself with your sunlight, and that does help your thyroid. Like, so if somebody came to me with underperforming thyroid, and that's the goal, okay, I set that up just like that. But what I do is, hey, the first meal of the day, as far as your protein source, needs to come dominantly from an omega-3 fatty acid source, right? Like that's salmon, that's things of that nature. And maybe even it would probably be salmon, like salmon, oysters, things of that nature. Why? Because we want selenium and iodine in large amounts right at the beginning of the day. And we want to get some stimulus of the first cascade of turning T4, which is the inactive hormone of thyroid, into the active form of thyroid. That signal comes from daylight. Or the beginning of the day. And I got to rephrase it to the beginning of the day, because if you live somewhere like Canada, where you might not get the sun in the morning, the byproduct of that, because remember, mammals are meant to live in both seasons, summer and winter. In the winter, if it's winter and you don't get sun, you get cold. Cold does the same thing. Cold stimulates the change of T4 inactive into T3 active, right? And you pair that same time frame with a high selenium, high iodine food, micronutrients, right? Micronutrients, and then omega-3 fatty acids. They all come in a package, very neatly packaged by nature, because that's what you need to do in those high latitude places. And then, again, still talking on the thyroid axis, okay, how do you make the T4, the inactive version? That is a nighttime thyroid that gets made at night. So then Now we fast forward throughout the day, we go to the nighttime version. The thing you don't want to do is inhibit melatonin release through blue light. If you inhibit melatonin release, that's the Kickstarter for nighttime stuff. That's the hormone that your body's paying attention that starts the process of putting you to sleep. That process also signals to other mechanisms, other pituitary mechanisms, to start the nighttime hormone manufacturing process and releasing process. Okay. So things that you don't want to do to inhibit melatonin release is having bright lights. The dimmer, the better. The less blue, the better. Ideally, no blue at all. Okay. It doesn't mean zero lights, right? It just means try to make them red. Try to make them as little as you need to do the things at night, right? And at night, you should be relaxing, right? You should be writing down some notes of the things that you need to do tomorrow. If you've got to do some emailing or whatever, that's fine. Get yourself some software that blocks blue light. Or if you don't have any of that, you can solve it all by having some blue light blocking glasses, right? So
and you also mentioned in a previous video, just get some old school bulbs and install them in your office or whatever.
And put them in your lamps, and now you don't use overhead lighting, you use your lamps, and that's going to go a long way. But that's the key concept of I don't want to interrupt my melatonin release. Melatonin manufacturing happened in the morning. Anytime sun interacts with your skin and eyes, it interacts with your mitochondria, and your mitochondria are what make melatonin at large amounts. So if you get like a Dutch test and your saliva swab shows that you have low melatonin, then at that point, the most crucial point for that person would be getting more sunlight on all their surfaces as much as possible so that they can make more melatonin. Okay. And then if they're having sleep problems or nighttime hormone problems, like, hey, they have low T4, but their melatonin is the right amount, then that tells me they're just not releasing it at night. Okay. So that's where I go, okay, we need to go heavy. I need you to go black, right? No lights, right? For at least a week. The sun goes down, all lights off, or something like that, so that we can release large amounts of melatonin. Once melatonin gets released, now other hormones like the manufacturing of T4 gets signaled. And so about 3 or 4 hours into sleeping, your T4 manufacturing comes on board, and there's a big, large bolus of T4 that's made. And along with T4, growth hormone gets released, so that now you can release fatty acids into the bloodstream when you're sleeping to recover your brain and your tissues, and lots of fuel to recover that, because the growth hormone signals the body to release all those substrates. And then later in the evening, the growth hormone gets broken down by the liver, and then IGF-1 is released towards the morning. But all of that gets pushed back if melatonin doesn't get released first.
And if you have had a lot of carbs at night.
Yeah, right. And so say you do the light stuff, right? And so you get a good melatonin release, but you ate all your carbs at night. Well, the melatonin does its thing and the thyroid will do its thing, but your growth hormone won't do its thing, because high insulin and high growth hormone don't happen naturally, right? People will start to kind of get it now. Okay, this starts, the way they work makes it not good to eat the carbs at night, even if you're eating them right at dusk, right? Because you're going to have to be processing those 2 or 3 hours into the evening. So those are legit hormones. Like, everybody knows about IGF-1, growth hormone, thyroid, and all of that, right? So that's the base. Like, that's how you deal with thyroid. That's how you deal with insulin resistance. That's how you deal with, hey, I'm not really recompositioning my body as good as I should. That's where I start looking, hey, how are those sequences involved and all of that? And then if I have blood work, like, hey, I have a melatonin swab, I know what that is. I have your T4, I know what that is. I have your T3, I know what that is. And I have what your cortisol is. Like, with those little bits of information, I can quickly start seeing, what is your body doing at different points in time during the day, and are they correct? If they're not correct, then we go, why are they not correct? What's the signaling problem that's happening?
And something you mentioned there, that hey, if that melatonin release is not happening, then you go blackout completely. That to fix you and to maintain healthy hormonal balance will be 2 completely different strategies. So people don't need to get scared of, oh, is this how I'll have to live for the rest of my life? No, you need to get your things under control, which might require some extremes.
For a month or 2, right? Yeah. I mean, it's no different than where am I at right now? I'm in El Salvador. I moved my whole family down here. We've been here for a month for remediation of living next to a cell phone tower because of things that I saw in the blood work, things that I saw in performance, things that I saw in my wife, like as far as medications that she was starting to get prescribed and stuff like that. I'm not joking. My wife had acid reflux for 18 months and she had to take Prilosec prescribed to her by a doctor all the time because the doctors couldn't figure out why that was happening. 2 days here, no medication anymore, absolutely zero medication for the whole month that she was here. She's like, this is the first time in 18 months I haven't had an acid reflux. I feel fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't believe it. That, I mean, it's extreme, right? I took them all the way to El Salvador to do this, right? But that's what I did. And guess what? It cost me a lot less than a surgery. It cost me a lot less than, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It cost me. Yeah.
What would be some practical advice for somebody who has lived completely upside down and let's say they have a really hectic lifestyle and they can't have a really heavy meal in a day? They're used to, hey, I'm just going to grab a shake on a go or protein bar or something like that because they really bought it.
Then I start with mono meals. I start with mono meals for people with the appetite issue. Is I start with mono meals. Hey, I want you to at least have a fillet of some fatty fish in the morning. And then I literally just, if you get in the car, I want you to actually stay in the parking lot for 5 minutes whenever you arrive anywhere in the morning. Roll your window down. Start with baby steps. If you think of the concept that I just said, that I just talked about, the key, hey, I want some sunlight, I want some cold, or both, or one or the other. You can find a way to do that in any lifestyle. The only lifestyle that I can think of, and I've had a client like this, is somebody who literally wakes up in their own house, works in their own house, and never leaves the damn house. But even then, go to the rooftop, right? If you're living in the city, go to the rooftop for every morning, or just, I want you to open the door. He's like, oh, it's freaking freezing outside. Great. That's excellent. Go outside, walk around your house, come back in. I'm like, start with the littlest step, the littlest entry possible, and start doing these things so that you can actually start turning the right switches on your body on. It will take longer, right, if you're doing these baby steps, but at least you're moving in the right direction and not going worse and worse, right? Now, if you want to go all gung-ho and stuff, yeah, it's not really that complicated, especially if you move somewhere where it's easy to accomplish those things. Like I'm basically I'm in my swimsuit, I'm outside, and I'm going to be in my swimsuit and outside the rest of the day. That's not hard to do. So now the hard part is, oh, I eat some fish and some seafood in the morning, and I get some micronutrient dense meals in the evening, in the morning, and then in the middle part of the day, if I'm going to train or if I'm going to be active or go for a hike or whatever, that's where I have my carbohydrates. It's not that, like I just described, meal timing for today for me. I'm not going to train today.
So to me, it would be interesting to find a way for you to kind of swap the concepts that I can't eat in the middle of the day anything solid because it's not warm. You know, how do you go around that? How do you go around that concept when you tell them, hey, you know what, after training, I would like you to have maybe a fillet of chicken and some rice. And they're like, yeah, but I don't have time. I need to drive and I don't want to eat anything cold. Is there anything that can be done around that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a problem with that. Canned chicken tastes great. Like you got to start thinking out of the box. Okay, I don't want to eat anything cold. Is that like a taste thing, or a chicken breast that's cold that's not good? Like I don't like eating that. But guess what? I don't mind. I take a can of chicken, I put some seasoning and some mustard in there, and I scoop it all around. I eat that cold, no problem. Or a tuna sandwich. Right? It's got tuna, it's got meat, it's got carbs. You're going to go train, so the carbs are great at that. People just aren't thinking of the right concept of what they need to accomplish. I just gave you 2 meals right there without really thinking too much about it. I can make a chicken sandwich, right? A canned chicken sandwich with the right seasoning, and I'll have carbs from the bread, and I'll have my protein source, and I'm going to go train. It's the middle of the day, so that's perfect. I got some protein in, and I'm getting most of my carbs in. Maybe have two or three of them, right? Go train. I can have those packed for every day of the week, and I just grab them out of my fridge, put them in my car or in my a cooler or whatever. And then when I have to drive to the gym in the middle of the day, I just eat them as I drive. Just eat them as I drive. Right? It's not. And if you happen to forget that, there's a Subway, there's a Quiznos, there's a shop that can facilitate that for you, and you just have it ready or swing by and pick it up. The eating in the middle of the day because you're going to go train and you don't want something cold, that's BS, because those types of meals, carbohydrates with some good choices of protein in the middle of the day, are the meals you want. So those are easy. It's the meals in the beginning of the day that are a little bit harder for people, and it's the meals at the end of the day that are a little bit harder for people, because I'm cutting out those carbs that they've been so busy neglecting during the middle of the day. I'm like, no, I want your carbs in the middle of the day. Do that. And then in the evening, that's when I'm like, yeah, don't have your carbs there, right? So then it's like, oh, well, now I have to make a meal that kind of tastes good, because I'm just going to have protein sources and veggie or fruit. I'm like, well, yeah, but you should be home, right? You should be, and maybe you're not. And that's maybe where a catering service comes in, or maybe you actually have somebody that bulk cooks all your healthy meats, right? And you just have them ready to heat back up. And then all you're in charge of is sauteing your vegetables and cutting up your fruit and stuff like that. That doesn't take that much effort. Like it's not hard. You just have to actually do it. And you're right. That is something that people struggle with. But the middle of the day stuff, I call BS on that, because the food composition of middle of the day food timing is actually the stuff that's readily available.
Yeah, and I think everyone is so bought into shakes, and it's easy, and you see it everywhere. Every single advertisement will be carb drink and protein shake and this and that and the other. But in reality, if you actually sat down with a professional bodybuilder who does muscle growing and fat burning for living, very few of them will actually take a lot of supplements. They will predominantly live on a food. That's the
when you see a bodybuilder or somebody like that showing you a YouTube video of what they ate during the day, and you saw that they made 10 shakes, that was for the video. That wasn't what they did every day. In fact, he probably had the diarrhea and the shits for the next 2 days.
Yeah. And if for someone like myself who's been like stupid size and ate everything, and you get 10 times better results from food. You just cannot even come near to how good food will make you look and feel compared to shakes. There's just no comparison. So, and yeah, you just already challenged that fasting stuff. So a lot of people will probably go, hey, how about it increases your growth hormone? I'm like, yeah, it increases your growth hormone because you don't eat anything.
Right. Which is the concept that I just said about, hey, if you do that at night, it works better. Why? Because you're not putting more food in your mouth. That's why it works. The growth hormone is supposed to be released when you don't eat. Okay. But here's the problem that people don't understand. Okay. If you fast during the day, you're truncating other metabolic processes in the effort to gain the growth hormone. Just do it at night, because that's when it's supposed to happen, and that's when you're going to be growing anyway, and that's where you want your growth hormone. The fat loss, the amount that growth hormone contributes to fat loss, because people will say, well, if I fast during the day and my growth hormone spikes, I'll lose more body fat. I'm like, not if you're sitting on your butt and you're indoors. I don't care how long you fast. You're not. That's minimal. That's minimal compared to, hey, do your training, do all your activity stuff during the day and really nail that. You're going to lose more body fat, because then you're also going to release body fat at night.
Yeah. Awesome, David. Amazing, awesome videos as always. Appreciate your time, and I'll catch up with you on next video.
Awesome, man. Have a good one.